Hello, I'm your host, Effie Pilarino, and today I have the pleasure to have with us Dr. Ritesh Jain, who wears multiple hats. I'm going to mention some of the current hats. First of all, let me welcome you, Ritesh, and thank you for coming and sharing your expertise and wisdom with us.
Thank you, Effie. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for inviting me.
let me try and paint a picture. As I said, you wear multiple hats and you have a non-standard background. So currently, you are the founder of Infinite, which is a fintech itself. You are on the Metaverse Council board. And correct me if I'm saying this wrong. This is the World Metaverse Council. We'll talk about it.
That's absolutely fine.
You earned a PhD in payments, open banking, financial inclusion from the University of Portsmouth, right?
That's right.
And tell us a little bit about your journey to where you're at today briefly. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about your PhD. How come you decided to do a PhD and what is it about?
Thank you, Effie. So in terms of my background, I'm a technologist and I've wore various hats across in the corporate life. So I was leading the future of payments for Visa at one point of time, as well as leading the tokenization, which was the foundation for Apple Pay. So had the opportunity to deliver Apple Pay for Apple and Visa. And then I'll end up in some completely different business, which is a shipping. So I was leading the transformation at Maersk, and I was in the midst of the biggest ransomware incident in 2017. Came back to banking again. So I was leading the global digital function at HSBC, and then I founded the Fintech. In terms of my PhD, so coming from the payments and banking background for long, I ran my own consulting company for 20 odd years, and the consulting the various global financial banks and the payment companies, as well as sitting as a member advisor on G20 GPFI. So always keen around the financial inclusion, and at the same time, I've been pretty much engaged with the open banking from early days. So the payments, open banking, and the financial inclusion are greater combination. So it was related to my contribution in the industry and the work which I was doing, related to building of the platform services and the capabilities. So my PhD is focused around the payments innovation, open banking, and the financial inclusion, and all its impact on the financial inclusion.
So is your focus financial inclusion mainly, or can we say that it's more on the open banking, open finance, and financial inclusion is sort of the result of this openness?
So I would like to clarify this. There have always been a question whether the open banking or the open finance will address the challenge of the financial inclusion. And I said this many times in the past as well, that the financial inclusion is not a challenge of the financial services alone. It's a public policy challenge, right? So my PhD is mainly focused around the openness, around the open banking and the open finance, and the payment innovation and the combination of it, as well as the impact of it on the financial inclusion.
So do you look at both, do you think at both openness, which is policy driven, and openness, which is market driven? And do you look at it as something that is needed because customers need it, or is it needed because we want or businesses want to change the business model and have more network effects? What do you think is happening there?
See, in terms of the openness, in the context of the business or the technology, right, it's about the degree of organizations willing to share their resources and the data and the capabilities, right, with each other. And that's what it's all about. So whether it's within the organizations or with the individuals, right, it is basically for to foster the innovation and the collaboration and growth, because the businesses or individual, we can't really grow independently. So openness, it's all about the sharing, building that ecosystem where we can share the data, share the resources, right? Now, but while we talk about it, it's whether we wanted it or the customer wanted it, it's both ways, right? Mainly, it's a customer driven, because what happened, or the regulatory driven as well. If we talk about, I'll just pick up an example of the PSG2 over here, that there was a significant challenge with the market concentration, as well as there was a significant challenge with the red taping. In terms of if somebody wanted to do an innovation, they want to bring a new product or services in the market, was really difficult. And
Yeah.
that's where the open banking started, right? The competition market authority came in play. And that's where the start of the open banking. So that how we can build that collaborative, innovative environment for the financial services and for the customer to ease their pain as well. So but there are challenges as well, right? When we talk about the openness, the biggest challenge that openness is trying to solve is around the siloed data or the siloed resources, right? So a lot of organizations, they have got a significant amount of data or the resources which are siloed, and they operate in that fashion, right? And they're not able to capitalize on this as well. So it is not only for the customer, but for themselves as well. So if we talk about openness in general, if we look into what happened through the fintechs or the financial services, whether it's through the transformation or fintechs pushing the financial institutions for the innovation as well, today we are seeing the financial institutions are utilizing their data and resources in a much better way to provide the value to the customer. And
Yeah.
that is helping, it's a win-win situation. So the openness is all about creating an environment in which the organizations are willing to share their data and the resources with the ecosystem.
It's
And
I like to think of it as first the internal APIfication of a business, which means
precisely.
silos. You try to break the silos internally to capitalize on your resources, and then you can go also externally, or you can do both at the same time. I guess nothing happens neither at the one point in time, nor, it's a journey, all this move towards openness, right? It never stops.
Precisely, as you rightly said, it's about the transformation, right? And the transformation is a quest. It's not a project or a program, right? You constantly transforming the organization. So it starts from internal, right? So as you rightly said around the APIification, building better services and the products which can integrate with each other, which can utilize their capabilities internally, as well as ability of the institutions to expose their capability to the outside world. And that's where the open banking came into the play as well, right?
Yeah.
So what we define as the open banking is washing up your dirty laundry in an open space. That's where we started.
That's a nice analogy. A nice analogy. Ritesh, you are a global citizen. You are in the UK, you're in the Middle East, you're in India. I never know where you are exactly, but you're sort of moving in those regions. I know recently you attended the big tech summit Leap in Saudi. And I wanted to ask you the pulse from that summit and from that region with respect to this openness especially in financial services, embedded financial services, e-commerce. All these trends are very important and interconnected these days.
Couldn't agree more with that. And thank you for bringing this up. It was a phenomenal experience, to be honest. I was in Leap. So Leap is basically learn, engage, accelerate, and progress. It's an initiative by the Saudi Arabian General Investment Authority, right? And it's all about to promote openness and the collaboration and to bring the foreign investment, talent, organizations, institutions together to learn and grow. It's the kind of openness that I've seen in Saudi now. It's phenomenal. And I'm very, very optimistic about the future of Saudi as well. It's basically a decade is for Saudi, to be honest, in terms of the innovation. I've seen the prototypes and the models of various projects over there, which is one of its own kind. They are going to lead the world. So I've said this earlier on the stage as well. Saudi is seeing the invisible. And one of the key learnings from the leap is the importance of the creating a supportive ecosystem, right, for entrepreneurship and the innovation. So leap has brought together the various investors, stakeholders, the organizations, and it is not just from the investment perspective. It's basically bringing them together, build up this ecosystem and collaborative environment, whether it's for the payment capability, whether it's a Saudi payments trying to innovate themselves, or the SAMAs and innovations in the open banking space, or the various other fintech spaces. Not only the fintech, but if you think about from the metaverse or the artificial intelligence perspective, as you know, a lot of crypto companies or the metaverse companies, they are moving their base into Gulf region or in the kingdom. So it's phenomenal experience.
Let's connect this with your recent role in this World Metaverse Council. What is that about? What's the mission? Who's involved?
So the Metaverse Council focuses around building an ecosystem and environment for people to communicate and share and do the advocacy, the policy advocacy as well, and bringing the partners, whether it's the government, the policy makers, and the institutions together, and create an policies and help and support in creating the policies around the metaverse, as well as build and grow the companies as well, and help and support the education institutions too. So if you talk about the metaverse today, unfortunately and fortunately, it's a buzzword, right? Everybody is talking about it, but in terms of the knowledge and the experience and the depth of knowledge is very, very limited. So the Metaverse Council is taking a center stage. We're connecting the dots from the economic policies to the policymakers to the governments and the corporates.
Is it a participation, a membership, an association of different individuals, from academics, from practitioners, from entrepreneurs, or is it mainly the big corporates that are already investing in the metaverse in different ways, from the Apples to the Facebooks and so on?
So it's an association of the industry leaders started. So the whole idea started with the industry leaders coming together with an objective and bringing the corporates and the government institutions as well, including the education institutions too. So that's what the whole idea, because it's a building of this collaborative environment, bringing that openness from the industry, institutions, as well as from the governments.
When I think of the metaverse, I think that there's two main areas that, are already showing us what the metaverse is about, and that is gaming and education. And I think that those two are the most sort of possible to scale ahead of others, in the short term. How do you see those areas linked to open banking, especially gaming rather than education? Do you see those links? Are we too far away from that world? What do you see there?
No, not really. In terms of the metaverse, I would say, yes, as you rightly said, it's mainly focused around the gaming as well as the education. But there are a lot more use cases which are building up as well, right? And gaming and the education is quite easy to relate with it, because obviously, because of the AR, VR experience, But at the same time, there's a lot more use cases. When you think around you're building an ecosystem, then obviously one got to make a payments, right? One got to accept the payments. And the variety of the payments today that we are talking about, it's not only the fiat, if we are also looking into the cryptos, we have got the NFTs and the whole ecosystem, right? So in terms of the open banking, there's a huge opportunity and the scope as well. For an example, like TransUnion has launched their gaming capability as well. So it's basically for the mindful gaming as well as responsible gaming. So it can, again, coming back to the open banking space. So for the open banking and gaming too, there's a huge opportunity, right? Which some of the initiatives are already there, like, as I said, TransUnion, and which is about the responsible gaming. Recently, we have done a research and a report from the policy institution where I'm as a fellow as well. It's about like whether your kids are on cocaine or whether they are gaming, because ultimately it's both are all about the dopamine, right? And so we got to be really conscious about that as well. Sorry, I don't want to deviate more
No,
onto
no,
the.
there's nothing, everything is connected. I mean, in my book, I'm surprised that we don't already have a banking institution that connects financial wealth with emotional, physical, and mental health. I mean, everything's health, right? And those two are connected. So I can see the convergence of that world. I've also personally attended some metaverse summits during the WEF in Davos and here, and I was surprised to hear that there are use cases for mental health in the metaverse, because you can, go in that space and visualize different worlds, and it can be used as a therapeutic means. And this comes from researchers. Of course, these are not scaled cases. But back to our open banking, and to one of the points that you made earlier, Ritesh, that you were talking about the importance of an entire ecosystem. And in India, we have the unique example where we have this public infrastructure, UPI, that has unlocked the network effects, and it's a private public collaboration at this stage, and a very important one in terms of fintech innovation and open banking. And now they've even taken a step further to go cross-border and establish a cross-border collaboration with Singapore. So now we have UPI linked to Pay Now.
Yep.
I know you are very knowledgeable on this subject matter, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on UPI, and then ask you a sort of tricky question about whether the FedNow architecture has copied UPI or has been inspired by UPI.
So let's take a first on the UPI, and then we can drill down onto that as well. Thanks, Effie, for bringing this up. So unified payments interface, right? It's a real-time payment system within the country, which is launched by the NPCI and well-known, well-recognized, and I call it as an epitome of the digital payments in the world, right? Launched in 2016, and fortunate enough, I can say that I have got my involvement into the global payments program, whether it's UPI or the P27 in Nordics or the FedNow in US, in one or the other capability, right? The world knows about the digital payments. World knows about the UPI and its penetration, and India is the leading space, has got the leading space in the digital payments in the world. Similarly, Singapore came up with the Pay Now in 2018, which is influenced by the UPI as well, right? And both uses the similar sort of capability in terms of making the payments, the virtual private addresses, or the mobile numbers to make the payments as well, right? Now, a couple of years back, UPI and MAS announced that they are going to integrate, and that was a great decision as well. In terms, it's a openness again, fostering that collaboration across the different payment infrastructure and making it more like a real-time payment, uh, not like it's a real-time payment infrastructure globally. So it's India is taking that leap, going for the cross-border payments with its neighboring countries and global countries as well. And I'm being cautious about what I'm saying in terms of the some of the countries where some plants are already there at the moment as well. So India has taken that leap to going cross-border and making that as a real-time payment infrastructure globally. It's a massive uh, benefit for the trade, for the individuals, and the organizations as well. It reduces the cost significantly, operational efficiency, as we know, that is already there, and ease of use. So it's phenomenal innovation. At the same time, I come from the G20 GPFI background as well, which is the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion. And India is inching closer towards the G20's vision of the cross-border payment as well as the easier, convenient payment for the people.
But it's also connected with the digital identity, right? Which exists in India and in Singapore and in many other countries. It does not exist. So it's kind of a combination of these that makes this work and makes it possible. Whereas, for example, in Europe, we have these different real-time payment systems, but we don't have the digital identity systems at the level, if you want, that exists in India or in Singapore.
Precisely, and that's where I talk about the DPI and the DPGs, which is basically the digital public infrastructure and the digital public goods. So the way India has taken the lead in terms of the digital infrastructure, that is phenomenal. The world knows where we come from, what we have done over the period of time, as well as what India is doing at this point of time. So building up these digital infrastructure where the digital public goods can be built up like UPI and can be replicated in the different part of the world. Similarly, there are open source infrastructure which have been built up by some of the institutions within the country and which are open source infrastructure for unique identity and which have been replicated across many countries in Southeastern as well as Africa.
Yeah. But it seems to me, Ritesh, that the rest of the world is more putting its focus and energy on all these CBDC pilots rather than, this type of digital infrastructure for public goods. And I mean, they could coexist, but they don't. I think the resources are going there. Whether it's human resources or the market is really full of these projects and not so much focus on the kind of digital infrastructure projects at that level that could have huge network effects. That's the reality.
That's right, Effie. I have got a view over here in terms of I've been involved and associated in the CBDC's project as well as some of the initiatives and some of the institutions as well who are driving the initiatives for the central bank digital currency. Now, yes, we are inching closer to the central bank digital currency, but let's not forget we still live in a world where the cash is still pretty much in rotation, right? And so it depends on the economies where we can get CBDCs as a success in the retail space, right? And I wouldn't go and argue about the commercial space, right? Or the wholesale that we all know that it is pretty good use case for the wholesale. But when it comes down to the retail CBDCs, we are still seeing the challenge. Let's look into Nigeria, what's happening with the e-NERA. Let's look into India as well. India has already testing this, right? But the digital payment infrastructure, this is the requirement for today. The CBDC is, yes, it will not replace the UPI infrastructure.
Yeah.
They will have to coexist because that's the demand and that's the user requirement.
It seems to me that we have a lot of innovation needed at that infrastructure level, and we're going to have many rails, even new rails or renovated rails, and we're going to be in a sort of this intermediate phase and fragmented phase for quite a while before we really are able to replace the whole infrastructure, whatever that is. The vision, the future, probably the most possible scenario is that we will have many types of monies around, and we need many types of rails, right, to accommodate all these types of value transfers around the world as the innovation continues and the fragmentation continues.
Couldn't agree more with Afi. As you rightly said, the payment rails have to coexist for the variety of the payments and the infrastructure, because we can't really see at this point of time that one sort of payment instrument will take over another straightforward. I don't see that happening, especially in the larger and growing economy. And let's not forget that we have got a separate challenges, as you rightly said, around the unique identity. That is the fundamental challenge, apart from the physical infrastructure, the network connectivity, and the devices. So the overall infrastructure requirement for the variety of the payment instruments and the rails, it's not there. And it is time-taking process.
Yes, and those things cannot happen overnight. Two questions before we close. One, I have to touch on Apple. It's been on the news with its savings account. Of course, this is in the US and it's only for Apple Card users. But we also have to watch what Apple is doing in India. They're shifting their supply chain there, right? They have increased the amount of iPhone production over the past 2 years, and I think there's a big investment clearly in the country for many reasons. So I can't stop myself from asking, why not link the Apple wallet or the Apple fintech world with the UPI system? Can you see that happening in some way?
See, let us start with what you said. Apple is investing in India for obvious reason, because once you have to, there's a regulatory requirement as well as in terms of the investments when you have a market share, right? So that's why one of the reasons, as well as if you look into from the cost perspective and the operations perspective, it makes sense for Apple to invest in India, right? Given the size of the market as well, and some of the challenges in the other market where they have been. Now, in terms of Apple as becoming a fintech, right, or becoming a bank, as you already said,
I'm not even thinking that they'll become a bank. I'm really wondering whether they will take their fintech services to India, which they don't have a big presence, even from an iPhone perspective, or I'm not aware that they have any of their fintech payments there, and it is a very big market.
Precisely, couldn't agree more. It's a sizable market, one of the largest country in the world as of now. And Apple has got a decent presence, and the presence is going to grow with their operations over here, because that could impact the pricing as well, up to a certain extent. I'm not alluding to anything, But at the same time, connecting to the UPI wallet, that is not there. And I'm not saying that is not a possibility. That could be a possibility, and it will open up a significant market for Apple. But Apple has to commit as well as invest in the ecosystem as well. And there's a significant competition when it comes down to the payment players in the country as well. As you rightly know about the phone pay and the Google and the Paytm, right? They take over around 95%, over 95% of the market as well. So yes, there's a significant competition, but if UPI connects with the Apple wallet, that's a significant milestone for Apple. It's going to be a significant milestone for Apple because it will open up a lot of opportunities for the Apple in the country.
Yeah, and now that they are starting to open physical stores, so who knows how that will impact the brand, right? Because it's connected, the branding, the hardware, the software, everything's connected in this market. So before we close, what are your final thoughts, or what are you excited about in terms of this openness? Which areas in financial services you think there's more potential, more opportunity? Is it payments? Is it the credit part, insurance? I mean, there's so many areas that openness can have a huge impact. What are you seeing? What are you excited about?
Now, see, I'm very excited about the open finance as a whole, open banking and open finance. So I call it as an open banking is the stepping stone for the open finance, right? And then the open data that we are talking about. So basically, it is giving a significant opportunity. I still see a huge play in the payment space and a lot more play in the credit space, right? Or you talk about any country in the world or the businesses, right? They only make money when they lend money. And credit is a huge market. We have seen that with the buy now, pay later, and how it has taken a step forward in no time, and how different companies have built up over the period of time. Yes, I'll not talk about the valuation though, Effie, as we all know.
Yeah.
But huge scope for the credit side, whether it is in the retail, and lot more scope in the MSME lending, right? Countries like India is struggling with the MSME lending, and even the players from the UK and European market are getting into the Indian landscape for the MSME lending, like Tide and quite a few other brands as well. So it's a huge market and a huge opportunity with the open banking and the capability of the data sharing and the collaboration. It's a great market for the insurance and any other sector, to be honest. But what I see and are more focused around the credit. So India is a huge market for the credit card as well, because it's still a very early time for the India for the credit card market, because the penetration across the tier 3, 4, and 5 cities are yet to be there. And MSME is always a great market.
Yeah, I've seen some numbers from studies lately that really there's a huge opportunity in India to offer credit to SMEs, and the percentage of SMEs in the market that is unbanked, if you want, in that respect of the credit. Thank you so much, Ritesh, for your time. It was delightful, and I will share with our audience where they can find you, as you're always very present on LinkedIn, and they can follow your activities.
Thank you, Effie, and it's a pleasure to speak to you, and thank you again.